Hi everyone, welcome back to Architect TV. Here's Hussam with you from Giuliani Associates Architects. And today we're going to talk about the rendering output. How you're going to do your rendering, how you're going to save the images and the videos through 3D Studio Max render options. So let's go to 3D Studio Max to see how it works. Okay, so imagine that you finish your 3D work inside 3D Studio Max, okay, and you create wherever scene that you're working on. You apply the material, you apply the camera, created the camera, you created the light and everything, okay. So let's imagine that we have this scene here, okay. Let me do this like that. Okay, so and now we want to do a rendering, which is how we're gonna provide the final image that we're gonna print out or send it to the client. So the way how 3D Studio Max work is when you create any 3D scene in the viewport, this is called a real-time scene. Okay, so what you're gonna see here, it's a real-time scene, but then you have to render it to the image so you can print it out, you can send it to the client, and so on. So the first thing you want to do, you want to go to render option, which is basically in top of the right corner in 3D Studio Max and called render setup over here, which is the teapot with a gear. So you click on it and you find the render setup window. Or what you can do, basically, you can actually hit F10 and that will bring the same window. So the shortcut for the render setup is the F10. Okay, let's go ahead and see what is those options, or what is the important option for you to create still image rendering. So the first thing you have to look at it is the target, which is the production rendering mode. So some of the render engine, they have like what we call real-time rendering, and that will go through active shade mode. So the active shade mode, it will work with any render engine supporting real-time rendering. But for us, usually we're going to use the production rendering mode, so we'll keep it as this. And then we have the preset, and we will talk about it a little bit. And then you have the render. The render is actually what type of rendering you're using right now. So by default is it's called scanline render. So the scanline render, it's using regular camera type and regular light type. If you have a V-Ray, you have to select the V-Ray engine from here, and then you have to select the V-Ray light, V-Ray camera, and so on. So it depends on what the render engine you're using. You have to create your own scene based on that render engine. So this is something you have to decide before you start working on. So if you have very few days to work on your rendering, so maybe it's good if you have to go with the scanline. The scanline quality is really not realistic as much as the Mentor-Ray and V-Ray and Corona and all of these kind of render engine. But in 3D Studio Max, the built-in realistic rendering engine is NVIDIA Mentor-Ray, NVIDIA iRay, and then Scanline, which is the basic one, it's a not realistic rendering, and the Arnold ART render. This is the latest render engine came with built-in with the 3D Studio Max. Most of the people, they're using Mentor-Ray, most of the people, or V-Ray. But like I said, Mentor-Ray is already built in 3D Studio Max, so most of the people, they're using. So in the render engine, you have to select which one you want to use. And most of the people, as a beginner, actually, they're using Scanline because they don't, they don't have time yet to experience the other render engine. So scan line rendering, this is the basic thing. You will notice when you go through all of these render engine, the most common window will stay there is the first one, which is called, the tab's called common. So the common is always be there. So even if I select, for example, Monterey, the common is still there, but the other tabs will change. So if you look at it, if I go to ART, common is still there, and then the other tabs will change. So if I go back to scan line, common will still there, and the other will change. And the reason of that, the common is actually, it's something that same thing is going to be on the old render engine, which is basically you have to select what type of output for rendering you need to provide, and what is the size, what is the options, and so on, where you want to save your files, and so on. So always they will remain same thing. The only tabs will gonna change is those tabs over here. Okay, depends on what render engine you select. And then you have the view. The view, right now we are in the physical camera 001, which is the same of here. So this is the physical camera 001. If you turn it to perspective and you want to render it, so it will turn to perspective as well, as you can see in here. So right now, if I press camera, it will turn to camera as well. Okay, so the first thing you have to decide what kind of rendering you want to provide. It's a single, which is mean one still image. So for now, if we want to just, create one rendering, so basically we just have to go and click single, which is mean one image. And then what area of rendering we want to provide, which is basically the view. So whatever we're going to see in here is going to be on the final output. So the view, the whole thing, okay? And then the output size. The output size, there is a built-in different sizes, most of them for the animation, and like NTSDV, NTSDI, D1 I mean, and so on. And by the default you have the monitor size, which is 800, 600, and so on, and you can change those from here. If you want to go like 800 by 600, you can click on it. These are the ready preset, and you have 800 by 600. If you want to go up, you have to lock the image aspect. So you locked it, and you go like 120 or 1200, and that will sorry, that will keep the proportion as is, because I locked it here, and it will give me 1200 by 900, or I can go, if I need 180, and that will goes to 960. Okay, if I want to go back one of the preset, I just click on it, and that will take me back to the save it preset over here. So I can just go with the custom, and I can put whatever number I need, and we will explain more about the print size through another options, or through another windows. So these are basically what you need to know about the output. And then of course the option, which is mean what you want to render. Do you want to render the atmospheres, which is mean, and the effect, which is mean if you have Vogue, if you have cloud, something like that, so they call it effect, or atmospheres. And then displacement, if you want to see the displacement map effect, which is mean, if you have a displacement map, it will show as rendering. If you just want to do quick test rendering, you have to disable these things. Video color check, this is actually when you do an animation rendering, then you probably want to make sure that the video color is compatible with the TV color or whatever, and so on. So these are the important. If you want to render the hidden geometry, if you want to area, light and shadow, force to side, and all of these options, you will have control. But for now we just keep them as a default setting. And then the important one is the render output, where you want to save your file and what is the format and all of these kind of things. So if you go to render output and you click on the files, you go to desktop. So the first thing you have to browse where you want to save it. For example, if I create a folder and called it render test, and then inside that folder I will give the file names, which is test1, okay, and then what is the type of the saving, what you want to save this kind of rendering. So some of the people, they just go with the JPEG because it's very light, but bearing in mind that this is like had a lot of color compression as well and the quality compression. So if you want to do a post-production on top of the image, it's preferred if you select TIFF or Target, TGA or TIFF, or even PNG. Those three is the most high quality image type, and the reason of that, they will keeping the color a maximum, as a maximum, like billions of colors information will store in the image, so you will not lose any quality, and you can do post-production on top of them, and you can, after you finish the post-production, you can save it as a JPEG. So all of these kind of information you have to know before you go and select what type of images you need to provide. If it's just for a purpose of test, of course you go with JPEG, because JPEG is actually very light size, so you can just make as much as you want for the test, and then when you decide to go with the final, you go and select TIFF or TGA or PNG. So for now we will select JPEG. Okay, so you have the file name, the type, and then you hit save. Then it will ask you what the quality of the JPEG you need. The quality is actually, it's gonna be, of course, not a good one, even if you go with 100s, but for the test purpose, it's really good, and it's fair enough to have it, and you will not consume a lot of hard drive size as well. So if you want to go even a little bit down, it doesn't matter, because this is just test rendering, and you hit OK, and now you are good to go, and you hit rendering. So if I hit rendering right now, voila. Of course I didn't put any light, I didn't put anything, it's just for test purpose. So now it's saved already. So if I close this and I go to desktop, I will go to render test, and I will have my rendering saved over there, and it's like the size is 800 by 600. It's called test1 JPEG. So this is the basic rendering setting, and how you can provide like still image rendering right away. There is a lot of other options that we can actually use in the single rendering, and for example, if I want to let me actually show you something else in here. Yes, assign rendering, and again you can even assign another render engine from the all way down in the menu, which is called assign rendering, and you can go to production, and in here you can select another render engine, and from here, if you select, for example, the V-Ray, you have to and you want to go with the real time, you have to select from here a real time active shaded. Okay, okay, so this is another option where you have to select the production type of rendering and active shade type of rendering, and then you can even use a different material for a different type of rendering. So for example, you're using a scan line, but you want to use, or you're using a V-Ray and you want to use scan line render material. So you can actually apply this as well from here. But as you notice, it's locked. So when you select production, type of rendering, all of them, they will turn at the same type of rendering. But if you want to select a different type of rendering, you just have to unlock that, and then from here you can go ahead and select different type of the material editor or production rendering or active shade rendering as well. So this is the very basic rendering options over here, and I will explain more in the next episode, where we have to talk about the render size, how we get the good quality for example, for 11 by 17 or any other size of rendering, and we will talk a little bit more about the other option in the rendering. So thank you so much for watching us for this episode, and be tuned for the next one. Thank you so much.